all of the stuff with the Tal Shiar and the entity behind the Tal Shiar, I find it plausible. So where it could go wrong is if they continue to be bogged down in the minutia, in the this means this and this means this on the computer screen stuff, and
Right.
CSI Miami
Don't like
the
that,
whole show.
right.
That's where it could go wrong. But I don't think they've destroyed that themselves yet. They just maybe are trying to
haven't.
build the world. So if they move in the direction of what is it like to be an old man who's not respected anymore, who had this great career and now is sort of having a kind of a rebirth and maybe discovering a new part of himself in his old age.
I could see this whole show as
Discover
an alternate what if timeline for Picard, and that
Yeah.
so far I don't really mind what they've done with his character. I don't think he's said anything that's too ridiculous. It's not as bad as that clip that I sent you. I don't know if you rewatched it, but from the second movie, First Contact.
Yeah. I know
It's
what you're
not like
talking
that. That is an abomination of Picard.
Right, it's
him
an
screaming
abomination
and
of
stuff and
Picard.
said, I want vengeance.
Right, that's not Picard. Picard is
Right.
the guy drinking Earl Grey, talking about his experiences in the probe.
They have been a little heavy with the Earl Grey. He says Earl Grey like every other word.
I agree.
Remember Earl Grey?
I like Earl Grey, and you like it. I like you.
I knew there was something good about you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little hot, a little heavy. Hopefully, it finds its own legs. But I think if they focus on the people,
was
it'll be
very
good.
funny. The escalator shot you referenced.
Yeah,
that was hilarious. He comes out of the meeting and he's like, "Oh darn," and he's on an escalator. He looks like I don't know, like Michael Scott coming out of an office meeting.
So my main problem with the show is that they do too many things visually and in terms of the dialogue that pulls me out of the Star Trek universe that I know. They add too many colloquialisms to the dialogue, like, oh, that guy's so hot. I don't want to hear that in Star Trek. You're supposed to decolloquialize speech so that it allows me to have a sense of this is classic. Right. That's what they did.
Nobody respects the classic as far as technique anymore, writing or with actual cinematic aesthetics. But I guess the one thing politically that I could see people being bothered by that I did notice was like they're trying to do some reverse things. Like how many characters in this are female versus male? There's like 2 guys in this whole show?
Yeah.
2 or 3? And I think like 99 women so far I've seen, which is fine. But it's just interesting that like every single, maybe in the future that's how it will be.
Yeah.
But
I don't have an issue with that whatsoever.
No, I don't either. It's just something I noticed. But I think
Gabe?
those 2 girls
are you sure?
making that comment, like there's a hot guy over there, that's a intentionally reverse sexism thing. Like we're gonna have our female characters comment on the hotness of a man. See, it's opposite now. We get the show, and we could do this version of it.
It's pretty hot though.
Well, yeah. But, the other thing, I didn't like the lighting of the first show. The first episode it reminded me of, in Star Trek Generations, the part where Picard's back for Christmas and it's like all nasty and movie looking. And the shots on the bridge, no, not the bridge, the bar with Guinan, everything is like really moody and dark. I thought they went over the top with that. It didn't look.
Yeah.
It seemed like they were hiding the set with the lighting. Like, we don't really have a set, so we're just going to do some really dim.
The thing that I think is amazing about The Next Generation and the next 2 shows after that, Next Generation and then Voyager and then Deep Space Nine, is they were able to create an aesthetic that even though it seems now bizarre that the laptop things on their desks were this thick and their communicators were giant compared to cell phones, there's something still 24th century about the aesthetic of that and the way that everyone is dressed. There's still something that feels future-y to me about it, even though maybe they just decided that they would make things bigger and clunky because they're fun to hold on to.
Yeah,
right?
They got tired of the skinny ones. They keep dropping them.
Right, they keep dropping it. It's hard to pick up when I can't get my thumbnail around it. So
you don't have to have a screen protector on your brick phone.
Right. You have a big old chunky, light but chunky thing. Maybe that is the future. And also the classic speech thing. Removing the colloquial phrases makes it still watchable. I'm going through Voyager right now. There's nothing colloquial in Voyager other than things like yep, shortened words, but really nothing. And there's a lot of that speech, and I don't like the super Americanized, like that. The guy that she's dating at the beginning in the first episode, the one that gets killed with the knife.
Yeah,
his use of language is very 2020.
I felt like in like watching people work on the Borg cube, it sounds like they're working at like Facebook headquarters.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the Borg cube.
Make it
Which
feel
maybe,
alien. And then there's
right.
the escalator. There's the fact that when Picard goes to check in to meet with the Admiral lady, they say, "Well, how do you spell your name?" They wouldn't do that in the future. They don't. They don't spell your name in the future.
Yeah. I noticed also they had the global warming reference. Didn't they have part of Starfleet headquarters underwater? Which I think it wasn't.
I didn't notice that.
I thought that part of Starfleet looked like it was underwater. Maybe it was intentional, but I thought in other futuristic iterations of Starfleet it wasn't. So like that wouldn't really make sense as far as global warming goes. I mean, if
you mean San Francisco being underwater.
San Francisco, yeah, it's in San Francisco, but I did like the solar panels on the San Francisco bridge. I thought that was kind of cool. I could see them like once you don't have to use cars to go across the bridge.
You want to keep the bridge.
You want to keep the bridge. It's a culturally relevant thing. Yeah, just use it for solar panels. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah,
that was actually my one note. I like San Francisco bridge solar panels.
That's your the one thing you wrote down.
It is actually, yes. I like the transporters. They're walking through, just on the street, on the sidewalk. That's interesting. That's plausible.
Dope. Yeah, I like it.
But having that and then going down an escalator seems a little dumb, especially when you have these, what are they called? Tubes or something in all the spaceships where you're down in like a second. Turbo lift. Why would you use an escalator when you have a turbo lift?
No kidding. Exactly. Yeah. Why? Why would it look like a mall escalator? Exactly.
It should look different, yeah.
And why are the office chairs just regular office chairs? I mean, try something. Do something. Don't film it in Facebook's headquarters.
Yeah. Yeah, it is weird because the stuff on Mars, like I thought that looked pretty cool. It looked decent. The stuff on Mars,
the androids,
from the second episode.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, and the whole they're obviously
like
CG.
the android behavior, speech patterns. They did that very well.
But
his
then
movements,
he's
awesome.
in amongst some like regular 20th century people going,
right.
"Hey, how you doing, android?
Like,
why don't they
smell it, right? Yeah.
You see Roseanne last night, android?" But they
very dumb. But
why
the
don't
android
they
is great.
talk like the 19? They might as well. The colloquialisms. I didn't think of that, but that's a way to specify what's wrong with it. Why wouldn't they talk in 1930s vernacular? It'd be just as ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
Android,
it's just
what are you doing over there? Huh?
Golly gee, yeah, right, precisely. But you have to. So the fundamental issue then is the people who are writing these episodes maybe haven't seen every episode of
That's
Star
what,
Trek, and that
Mike
should
and
be a
Richard
prerequisite. They should sit down with the original, the people who created.
You should have to like Star Trek enough to have seen the whole thing.
Yeah.
To work on Star Trek.
Yes. And you have to understand what imbibes it with its itness, so that you can have a futuristic looking. You can have a 2020 version with better technology and better CGI while maintaining its itsness, whatever you want to call it. I mean, on Voyager, Nick Sagan, Carl Sagan's son, was responsible for a lot of story ideas. He was a story consultant on a lot of the ideas. And he got it fundamentally, understood what Star Trek is and what it's about. And you can... I mean, he's not completely responsible, obviously, but there's a group of people working on Voyager, working on... Voyager later then gets a little less good, but early Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and The Next Generation, and there's a thread through those, and it's not visual; it's something else, and it's a language of understanding a sort of a philosophy of the future that might be missing, and we'll know within 3 or 4 episodes if this Picard is going to go to the left into Discovery territory.
How would you
right.
relate that to what's the first one called?
Sorry,
Enterprise. Doesn't Enterprise have a kind of more modern aesthetic but it still worked as a show?
Don't say bad things about Enterprise, Gabe.
No, I'm not. I'm just asking. Doesn't that doesn't have the traditional, like when you look at Next Generation or whatever I've seen of Voyager or Deep Space Nine, I mean they almost look like they could function like on a stage.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, for sure.
Just have the set as it is, no camera movement, and an audience watches and they say,
right.
Alexander, you should not be doing that.
Yeah. Exactly.
But these new shows are all flashy.
Pretty good Worf right there.
Well, I wouldn't be able to do it without this little microphone right here. But the new shows are basically like people spinning around on a merry-go-round with lens flares, like the crackheads with cameras with lenses.
I do think
that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but they're not the Star Trek aesthetic. It's not locked down. Same thing with new
imbued with
Star
the
Wars.
philosophy. I think imbued with the philosophy. It's not a visual thing specifically.
It has to flow through you
Yes.
as a filmmaker. You have to know what you're doing.
Yes. That's right. And I think Enterprise does have it.
Yeah.
I think Enterprise because the original Enterprise show, it looks very different visually. They have
How
better
did they
CGI.
maintain that with the different aesthetics?
Well, part of it is the sort of main elephant in the room, which is that now stories have to build on the one before, and every episode of Voyager, except for a two-parter or The Next Generation or Deep Space Nine, is a standalone thing, a standalone story by itself, and it's self-contained. That's part of it. And Enterprise might have killed itself because of that. It was the first Star Trek show to shift. I think in the second or third season, they did the long. They moved. They shifted. They started with the individual, and then they moved. And
I guess I'm thinking purely of aesthetics because, I think the aesthetics are more important than people think because it gives you a mood and a vibe that it changes the nature of conversations.
Yeah,
makes you concentrate on other things. Imagine if a Star Trek scene could be shot like a true Star Trek. If you look at different filmmaker styles. Stanley Kubrick could shoot a Star Trek scene with just like a flat, a camera movement that's going in like at, this fast or like tracking down a hallway. That could be Star Trek. Anytime you start whipping the camera around and having action scenes and craziness, it seems like that's not Star Trek. The stage is a good example. It should be more like a stage play because even when action happens in TNG, it's very simple. The camera won't move more than panning down to the floor, basically.
Right, and when you see two ships, you just see two ships like that.
Right.
So,
but
that's
that
a very
gives
good
it
point.
that feeling.
That's a very good point. So maybe as a director, the first question should be, how am I going to build the interaction between these two sides or these two people? How's the conversation going to go? Where do these people stand? Rather than, what can I do to make this cool? What can I do to make this zippy?
The studio is never going to say, they're never going to greenlight anything that doesn't look like whiz-bang, flash, J.J. Abrams shit his pants on the screen.
Well,
they won't do anything other than that now.
I've got a theory, though. I've got a theory that the popularity of Mandalorian might start to shift the aesthetic, the standard for this sort of show. With the popularity of Mandalorian, with its simple, very Western, very stark
the frame,
style,
I like the simplicity
framing,
of the frame is nice.
Yes, I think that sort of might be the new. If Cybertruck is the aesthetic of the automotive future, maybe Mandalorian is the aesthetic of sci-fi future.
Here's a bold statement for you. So far, I think story-wise, the new Star Trek Picard I like better than the Mandalorian.
Okay,
and aesthetics, I like the Mandalorian better.
Right.
If they swap those things,
right? Yes, I really think that people have to start. There has been this assumption over the last 10 years with the ability to do anything with CGI that with great power comes a great necessity for action and zippiness and lights and flying around, right? But I think Mandalorian and some other shows too, but that's the first one that comes to mind, demonstrates that you use CGI to support and you want to create a sense of stability and grandeur and you want to build an aesthetic that feels very unique to that thing. And I think Mandalorian succeeds at that very well, and I think other shows will have to start paying attention to the success of Mandalorian for that reason.